Welcome back to Impact Media, everyone. Today, my guest is Marijn Tinga. He is called the Plastic Soup Surfer, and he uses a paddleboard made from recycled plastic to travel rivers and streams to spread awareness about the issue of plastic pollution. And he documents his journeys and uses his platform to positively influence politicians and decision makers at the highest level to implement policy addressing plastic pollution. And today, he's going to outline some of his most successful campaigns, including the adoption of the Plastic Soup Surfer resolution, which broke 20 years of political deadlock in the Dutch parliament, making deposits on small plastic bottles mandatory starting in July of 2021 and cans in 2023. And I don't think I did him justice with that short introduction there, so I'm going to let him introduce himself. Marijn, welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me. Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, in lockdown here in the Netherlands. Curfew, lockdown, not much to do.
Well, Marijn, why don't you tell us what in September, you just completed a 550-kilometer journey. Can you just kind of give us a high-level overview of that?
Yeah, so I paddled from the most southern tip of the Netherlands all the way to the most northern part of the Netherlands, right? Well, through all our rivers and streams we have here in the Netherlands. And I did that because I wanted more attention for waste separation at schools. And behind that is a strategic and political fight between municipalities on the one hand and waste companies on the other. And in the middle, you have the packaging industry, which has to pay for the collection of plastic waste. But I won't go into that. But that was my goal. So I went past all these schools, and I had students and pupils sign petitions which they could bring to their mayors and ask for waste separation in their classrooms. Because I feel, and not only me, but a lot of politicians here in the Netherlands feel that we should have more attention for our waste and plastic waste, especially, because that's the only way we can start to get that awareness and start to reduce plastic waste.
So before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit and kind of touch upon the story of how you got into this, and specifically, why you chose recycled plastic, building paddle boards, building surfboards out of this recycled material. Why did you do this? What was the impetus for you to get into this?
Well, I'm a passionate surfer, kite surfer, wave surfer, and I'm a biologist as well, and an artist. I was kite surfing a lot along the Dutch coast, and I stumbled across that plastic waste, that plastic litter on our beaches, which you find there as well. And I felt if I build a surfboard from this plastic, which is just on my local surf beach, this was about 7 years ago, I can make a statement. So I wanted to make an artwork. I was an artist. I wanted to make an artwork. And I collected enough plastic waste from, within just 2 kilometers of my local beach. I used an iron rod and a gas torch just to press together that plastic, washed up plastic I found on the beach. And that was my artwork. That was a surfboard. And I surfed that to reinforce that statement. I surfed that along the entire Dutch coast, which was a record attempt. So it was surfing on plastic waste, on plastic soup, as we call it. And that made me the Plastic Soup Surfer. And this was a project about awareness. And it's only after I built another surfboard from plastic bottles, and I started that I became political.
And that's really an important part of the conversation here, and I want to get to that in just a second. But I want to hear more about you educate audiences a lot about how plastic is kind of the catalyst to like a throwaway society. And a lot of us kind of unconsciously just use plastic in our everyday lives, not really thinking about the environmental ramifications of it. We may understand it intellectually. We may know it's not good for the environment, but we don't really see it. And it almost seems like by you building these, surfboards out of like 60 plastic bottles, I think is one of them you had, it really is highlighting and illustrating just how detrimental plastic is to our environment. But can you talk more about how plastic is just enabling kind of like a throwaway culture, and what your artwork and your influence, how that's making a statement on it?
Yeah. Well, I think everybody, just to get back to that statement, to that artwork, everybody feels there's a certain connection between surfing, the ocean, and then plastic pollution. That's how it all started. That's how that awareness came about. And it's, for me as well, it took a while after becoming the plastic soup surfer, after having surfed that 3 days along the coast on that board made from plastic waste. That's when I really started educating myself on this. And I see it that this plastic has, or plastic packaging, plastic in general, has befallen us as a society. Well, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and it's the catalyst to this throwaway society. And what I mean by that is that single-use packaging is used for single-use plastic. Single-use plastic is used for our impulses mostly. It's the cheapest solution. Mostly, it's used for marketing and for our impulses to sell, to our subconscious impulses. I can't think of the English word here quickly, but it's so everywhere you go. Plastic is used for marketing. It has facilitated on the go. It has facilitated that anywhere you go, you can have your products sold, because it's in small packaging, because it's fresh enough for somebody to take away, because it's on the go, because it's single use. You don't have to think about anything anymore. You can be as lazy as you want, and you have these impulses. Your impulse is satisfied straight away. So, but on the other hand, we're talking about a material. So this is a paradox. I call it the plastic paradox. On the other hand, we have a material that demands the highest responsibility from us, because this plastic shouldn't, if it is spilled into the environment, we can never retrieve it, which is one part. And on the other hand, microplastics and also the additives added to plastics leach from these plastics, and they are known to be toxic or hormone deregulating. So there are many facets to plastics that make them harmful or dangerous or potentially dangerous. And on the other hand, you see that these plastics are used for marketing and to feed our impulses. So that's the paradox, and we should move away from alternative. What you see a lot is that we to get away from to get a solution, or the solutions are, or in Europe at least, we see that a lot of times we are looking for solutions in alternative materials, when we should be looking for alternative behavior. So in reuse or refillable, for instance.
And so you're obviously, you're not denying the importance of things like cleanup or more environmentally sustainable materials. But what I hear you saying then is that even if we implement those solutions, we still haven't solved the problem of changing the societal behavior. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. So recycling and cleaning up are no solutions at all. Actually, they're just part of this system we've built around plastic. So recycling is what you do after you've sorted your plastics or you sorted your waste, and after you've done the collection of that waste. But it should start at the collection. If we have proper collection, you have big companies saying all our products are recyclable or are recyclable, right? 100% recyclable, when they should be saying all our products are 100% collected. That would make sense, because that's the only way we don't find that it won't spill into the environment anymore. I mean, if you think about a turtle, a sea turtle, it doesn't matter whether it's biting recycled plastic or recyclable plastic or bio-based plastic for that matter, or even compostable plastic for that matter. What should be done is we should have full responsibility by those parties putting out plastic products on the market. They should take full responsibility for collecting that and making sure it doesn't spill into the environment.
And so then let us touch upon some of the actual policy changes you have helped to get passed in Parliament. I want to highlight the journey you took through the North Sea on a recycled board, going from Netherlands to England, essentially. Can you talk about that? What did that start?
Well, yeah. So this was in 2016. So what I do is I build boards from plastic litter or plastic waste, and I attract attention by, doing long distance expeditions on those. And in this case, I built a board from plastic bottles, and I surfed it from the Netherlands to England across the North Sea, which is about 200 kilometers, kite surfing. And I did that as the kickoff. That was a record attempt. But I did not do that for the Guinness Book of World Record, but I did that because it was the kickoff to a petition for deposits on small plastic bottles in the Netherlands. Now, we do have deposits on big plastic bottles in the Netherlands, but we don't have deposits on small plastic bottles in the Netherlands. And everybody knows, if you have deposits on plastic bottles, they will not be thrown out anymore, and they'll be collected and brought back to the stores or wherever you hand in these bottles, in the Netherlands, preventing 75 million of these small plastic bottles in our rivers, streams, and beaches or parks every year. 75 million every year if we have deposits on those. So this record attempt across the North Sea, these 180 kilometers, was the kickoff to a petition. And I collected 55,000 signatures with that petition. And of course, the story behind it of somebody surfing a board made from plastic bottles across the North Sea. And then when I was in Parliament, I presented this petition with these 55,000 signatures to the politicians, to the Parliament members, but I also had a resolution which I'd written myself, and it read, we want 90% less of these small plastic bottles within 3 years. So 90% less. So it didn't say the word deposits, and that was actually the breakthrough, because before that, these political parties had always been fighting among themselves, backed by the big companies, by the soda companies, the right-wing, the lobbyists on the one hand, and the left parties on the other hand. And this was the political breakthrough, because now they had a result-driven resolution which did not say deposits anymore, and which did not say cans. It only said plastic bottles and reduction. And that was enough. That was enough to have a compromise and use this for the basis for the policy to roll out new policy. And well, as you can imagine, they never, the companies never reached this 90% reduction of plastic littering of these plastic bottles. And as a result, we will now have deposits on small plastic bottles starting the 1st of July. And just last month, they used that same policy to make a decision that they will also have deposits on cans by the end of 2022. Sorry. Yeah.
And this is so interesting because here in the United States, it is so difficult to get things passed in Congress and get bills not only brought to a vote, but just to get anything done. And you seemingly achieved this just with storytelling, essentially, by riding this board across the North Sea. What do you think about that, kickstarted actual results? Why did they respond? Why do you think the politicians responded so well to what you did?
Well, first of all, this was a topic or a subject that was being talked about, I mean, for maybe 20 years already. So I was on this wave, you might say. This wave was already rolling. And it was actually, it's great that you mentioned storytelling, because I think that had a great part to do with it. It played a great role because it opens doors. It makes that politicians want to talk to you, want to see you. You become a representative for a cause because of storytelling. And I use that later on again. So I had this resolution from politicians, but you all know what promises from politicians mean. I guess it's the same thing in the United States as it is here in the Netherlands. So what I needed was these lobbyists, these companies. I wanted to put those in the spotlight. So what I did, I built another surfboard from a paddleboard this time, and I paddled it down the River Rhine from the source high up in the Alps all the way back to the sea. And the river mouth is actually in the Netherlands. So that was 1,000 kilometers. And along the way, I picked up pieces and plastic bottles. This one's actually from the Rhine. And I brought those back to the soda company, so to the Dutch Coca-Cola, to the large supermarkets. And I got into the offices of the CEOs by using a bailiff and a judicial instrument, which we had developed ourselves with a couple of lawyers or attorneys. And this judicial instrument implied responsibility for these company CEOs in these companies. And the bailiff made sure I could, walk straight into the boardrooms with this judicial instrument and with my plastic litter. And combining that promise from the politicians on the one hand, and this implied responsibility from these CEOs, and getting to know the interests of the soda companies on the one hand and the supermarkets on the other hand, and using that and relaying that once again to these politicians. That is what actually materialized this policy. So there's a few years in between this resolution, the actual policy rollout, because it all takes time. Of course, you need perseverance, but in all that, in that whole trajectory, in that process, storytelling always played a great part, because on the one hand, you have a story to tell in the media because they're interested in your personal experience when you were on the surfboard paddling down the Rhine, because that just makes great images, and it's much more attractive than, plastic litter, images of plastic litter in the Rhine. now you have, well, this representative. And on the other hand, it also opened the doors to these CEOs because they were interested, just intrigued by these different ways of attracting attention. Just curious, you might say. So they were always open to talk to me.
And that's a really interesting insight, and I'm glad you shared that with us. And I think that your story in your case really highlights the power of storytelling to get political action done. I'm curious, do you have any advice for anyone? And you talked a little bit about this in your TED Talk about what can I do, or what can someone do as a random citizen? What would you recommend to someone who has a story to tell and they want to get something done? Maybe they want some new policy to be implemented. What advice do you have to that person?
Well, I guess you really get into campaigning advice right now. But I guess one of the most important things is making sure that you get results, and that you start small, that you make steps, and that you start small. That means on the one hand, looking for a cause, which having a vision on the one hand, of course, but also looking for small steps which you can, in which you know you will have a success, because that builds up to larger success. And of course, you need to get a right amount of people around you to help you, because also I didn't do this by myself. I stand on the shoulders of many who helped me to do this along the way. I guess, and it might sound corny, but if you're talking about storytelling as well, I mean, the thing is, you are dealing with people, and always. I've been, I don't know, you call this a fraternity? If I was a biology student, so I was in this fraternity, and I was in the board of this fraternity years and years ago, and what I've noticed, what I've learned is that the same dealings we had in this small fraternity board, it's the same way they talk to each other on the highest levels. It never it doesn't change. So you're always dealing with people, and you always have to respect others in that way and gain their trust. And that doesn't matter if it's in a fraternity board or on the highest level. It might sound corny, but this is what I've seen thus far.
And it seems like storytelling is a good way to breach that empathetic trust of people, or at least tap into their humanity, so to speak.
Yeah, you create your own angle just because of your story. People understand your angle because you've lived it. You've suffered for that angle. By surfing all along the Dutch coast and having all these blisters and fever and whatever, and just feeling that pain, you've suffered your story, and people understand that. It must have a certain importance because he's done all this to tell that story.
And it does have importance. Well, Marijn, what are you working on right now? What do you want our viewers to know about any campaigns that you're looking forward to here?
Well, we're actually working. We've got this app. It's called the Plastic Avengers app, Plastic Avengers. And what it does is you take a photograph of plastic litter, depending on the campaign. And at this time, so you just take, in this case, we are working on Mars, the Mars bars. People always think you have Mars bar, but in that whole Mars company is also Twix, Snickers, M&Ms. It's all part of Mars. And what we've seen is that certain companies like Nestle, for instance, they are working on alternatives alternative packaging, for instance. And what we've started is a campaign on Mars to get to talk to Mars Netherlands in this case. And we've already with this app, we've already have, I guess, nearly 7,000 pictures taken of littered Mars bar wrappers. So that's M&Ms, like I said, that's a whole lot more than just Mars. And we take that information, that data, we take that to these companies, in this case to Mars, and we try to talk to them and see in what ways they can change their wrappers or their way of offering their products to reduce littering, or maybe even reduce use of plastic. I've got another example here. For instance, we did the same thing for these. It's a Dutch sweet brand, but it was in the top 10 of the audits of one of the litter pickers, one of the best-known litter pickers in the Netherlands. I work a lot with him. He's called Dirk Groot. So he saw this was in the top 10 of the audits, litter audits. It's called Antaflu, and we went up to this company with 8,000 photographs of wrappers being littered in plastic, and they actually changed. It took 2 years, but they changed their wrapping from plastic wrappers to these wax paper wrappers. So this was introduced last summer, actually, here in the Netherlands, because of one of our campaigns. Now we're looking to do the same, or at least see what Mars can do to reduce littering.
Well, Marijn, we will keep an eye out for your campaigns, and I will post links to your website and any other resources that you would like people to check out. It's been a pleasure having you on. Stick around. We are going to transition into just chatting, and we'll answer any live questions that may have come in. So Marijn, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, just sit tight.